So this is a picture of the beautiful Jordana lying in a waterfall last summer. And I chose this photo because I wanted to show you how I use different tools to lift shadows and blacks in Photoshop. This is a real problem for me personally. I like a lot of contrast in my photos, and sometimes I take it too far and I bring my blacks really black and I make my shadows really dark, and I get to a point where I lose some details. And therefore sometimes I find I'm trying to bring the detail back. I don't think this photo is too bad because I've held myself back recently and I've tried not to get into that problem. So this isn't as bad as it could be, but I'll use it as an example. So some of the tools that I like to use, one that I wouldn't normally use myself, but you could use, is brightness. I think it's a very easy tool to use. So all you need to do is lift the brightness up. Doesn't matter if it's too strong right now. Invert your mask using Command I, and then using a brush with white you can then paint it just in the areas that you want it. And again, if it's way too strong, you can then use your opacity on your layer to bring it back down. I wouldn't normally use that tool, to be fair, but it's an easy one to use for a general lift on your photo. Levels are quite good. I used to use this an awful lot. I don't use it so much now, but this was my go-to tool earlier on. I would start with the midtones because actually you can do a lot with just the midtones. And here I think the midtones are fine. Again, invert your mask. I'm just going to copy the mask across to save time, to save painting each time. And there we go. You can see what a difference just levels make. And again, if it's too strong, just change your opacity. I think one of the most powerful tools in Photoshop are curves, but I do think they take a bit more time to get used to and get comfortable with. But I think if you can control curves and get used to using them, they will give you a lot more freedom because you really have so much control. I think one of the most useful tools is this little tool here. So you click on it and then click on a part of your image. It will show you exactly where on the curve that point is. And therefore you can just attack that little area. So for example here, we've seen where the hair is, or the dark parts of the hair. I'm going to put another point in the middle of my curve, so I'm just cutting off the top of the curve, so I'm not messing about with that. And I'm just going to literally lift. If it's starting to distort all of the other areas, then just add another point and just pull that back down. So we're literally just playing with one little bit of the curve that we need. Again, do your mask and then bring your opacity down to where you want it. One of my favourite tools at the moment for lifting shadows, it's my go-to tool at the moment, is selective colour. Now I put a lot of colour in my shadows, so if you don't know what colour you're working with, because it looks like we're working with black, but there's actually colours in there, so just do a hue and saturation layer. Use this little button here and just click on the area, and that will tell you what colour you're dealing with. And as you can see here, we've got two different colours, so we're dealing with magenta and blues. So I'm going to delete that layer, I don't need it. Now I'm going to go into selective colour. I'm going to go to magentas, and we're using these black, this black line. So I'm going to lift the blacks right up in magenta. And again, the black area in blue, and again I'm going to mask it out and draw it in where I want it. And the reason I like this so much is because it gives a really, really natural result. It's very subtle, but it's effective. And if it's not strong enough, you can always duplicate the layer. So for example, if I duplicate the layer now, I've then got a second layer to play with. I can bring the opacity down on both layers or one layer and get it exactly how I want it, and I can add as many layers as I want if it's not strong enough. And if I put those in a group, there, you can see the effect. And that's how I like my shadows at the moment. It's almost always selective colour. Another good tool you can use is the black and white layer. Again, we already know what colour we're using. We're using blues and magentas, but if you didn't know that, you could use the hue and saturation tool to find out what colour you're dealing with. So again, if we just play around with the blue and the magenta, but you need to make sure that you're in luminosity mode, otherwise it's black and white. And here again, you can make subtle changes and just see what effect you like, and then change the opacity of the layer further. One more tool that's useful is just to duplicate your background layer and use the blending mode screen. I really recommend you get to know your blending modes because they give you so much power in Photoshop. Generally this whole section with lighten, screen, colour dodge and all that lightens. Screen is the one that I use most of all. Again, it gives a very strong effect, but if you just mask it out and then play with the opacity to bring it down to where you want it, it does give a lift. And one more technique that I know, which I sometimes use, is to duplicate the background layer and go to Image, Adjustments, Shadows, Highlights. I then take the amount of the shadows right down. 10 is like my magic number. I don't touch anything else. I still think it's way too strong, but I'll mask it out. And then I'll bring the opacity right down to the point where I like it. So I hope that's helpful. That shows you lots of different ways to do the same thing, and I think it's up to you to find which way you like most. For me at the moment it's selective colour. That's by far my way of raising shadows and bringing up details in black areas. I find it most effective and most natural. I think it's very overwhelming when you start Photoshop because there are just so many tools and you think, wow, how am I ever going to master all of these tools and what they do? But I think if you look at it from the other direction, if you think, what am I trying to solve, what's my problem? And you just find one tool that works for you, I think that's a much better way to do it. Then it's not overwhelming, and gradually over time you can build up your knowledge of all the different tools and find out ones that work better or best for you and how they work in different situations. I hope that was helpful. Please let me know if you've got any questions, and if there's anything else in particular you want to see, do let me know. Thank you, bye bye.